The abduction phenomenon is clandestine. And the way it is clandestine is that the way the secrecy prevails is that first and foremost, the abductees are not allowed to remember what happened to them, obviously. And so when they do remember, it's not a full memory. It's in bits and pieces of memories. It's got dream material in it. It has material of perhaps some popular culture in it, and it's severely truncated usually. And sometimes people say things that literally never happened, using hypnosis to find out what did happen. And in fact, nothing happened that they said. They were abducted. But all abductions, all of them that I have looked at, are physical. People are physically missing from their normal environments. They might be missing for 2 or 3 hours, where people search for them and call them, and they're not there, and there's an emergency call that they missed, and this and that, and parents have searched for their children, and children have searched for their parents. This is common. Therefore, they are taken when they are missed the least. That means that they're not taken out of work, because that would be damaging in a sense. They're not taken when they're in the middle of a party, although sometimes that happens. Wander into the backyard and don't come back for a couple hours. They're oftentimes taken at night when they're alone. They don't have to be asleep. It's not sleep paralysis. It has nothing to do with it, anything that has to do with sleep. But that's when they'll be missed the least. And so the clandestine nature of it prevents people from knowing. I'm going to throw out an erroneous number. I'm going to say maybe 90% of people who are abductees do not know that they are abductees.
How does that work?
Well, they have had unusual experiences. They might have unusual displacements in time and place. They're doing something at 1 o'clock, and then suddenly they're across the street and they're doing something else, and it's 3 o'clock. And they think, gosh, that was weird. What happened? And then they think, well, I'm just not going to think about this. And because their abductees are not supposed to remember, and they sort of know that, and they just go about their business, other ones incorporate it into their lives thinking, this is just the way life is. Oddly enough, but I have had that. Now, people see other people being abducted and are not abducted themselves. People are abducted in groups and can confirm each other's abductions. People can sometimes, and this happens, meet other abductees at random, run into them on the street or something like that, and each one recognizes each other from being together on an abduction event. It's rare, but it does happen. And so there's a physicality to this. It's not a mentality.
So what's the difference between that deja vu experience where two abductees are seeing each other
Sessions with
and recognize each other, or someone who's saying, you know what, I resonate with you, maybe I've seen you in a past life kind of thing. How do we distinguish between that and the abduction experience?
It's difficult to distinguish between people who think they have past lives, or they've seen people on a higher plane of intellect or emotion or consciousness or whatever, unless you do hypnosis. By looking at people over decades, I can see change in time, I can recognize differences that are happening, I can see the progression of the phenomenon, and I've been extremely fortunate to be able to do that. There's obviously a trajectory to the abduction phenomenon. It is not an examination of people. These aliens are not interested in what makes us tick. We used to think this years ago. I used to think this years ago.
What do you think now?
This turns out to be a program with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it is goal-directed. And what we're looking at here is a workforce that is abducting people, and how can I just say this straight out, creating other beings who we call hybrids, who look are different stages of hybrids, although it's probably more of a smooth continuum than my stage idea, of early stage hybrids who look sort of like gray aliens, and middle stage and late stage and human stage, and then what I call hybrid, who are beings who, and this is new information, who are being trained to live here, and their training comes from abductees.
You've had the opportunity to observe a lot of patterns and a lot of information. Have you grasped an agenda by these ET connections?
There are three pillars to the abduction phenomenon. There's actually a fourth one, but I'm not including it because it's not as, well, I'm not including it. Number one, it's intergenerational. If a person is an abductee, their mother or their father, or sometimes both, were abductees. If they were abductees, almost certainly their mother or father was an abductee. When the abductee has children, and let's just say has 2 kids, they will be abductees. And when they marry a non-abductee, all of their children, the 2 kids' children, if they each have 2 each, that's 4, they will all be abductees. Therefore, the intergenerational aspect of it makes sure that there are plenty of abductees around. It keeps up with the population. And the second pillar is that it is global. This is not an American phenomenon. The UFO phenomenon has been noted around the world. And the UFO phenomenon is the abduction phenomenon. It is. They are one and the same, in my opinion. The third pillar is that it is clandestine. And the only way you can, in the thread I wrote a long piece about the meaning of secrecy and how this has to be kept secret and that has to be kept secret and this and on, all the ramifications of non-secrecy and all that. It boils down to one sentence. They don't want us to know what they're doing. Global, intergenerational, secret. This does not add up to good. I don't see good in these 3 aspects of it. I can't be happy about it. So, because of the global nature, because of the clandestine nature, and because it keeps up with a booming human population. When I was born, there were 2.3 billion people on Earth. Now, I'm 73, there are 7.4 billion people on Earth in my lifetime. It's extraordinary. But the requisite number of abductees remains constant. If not, there are more than is needed now. So, when I say, what is the meaning of all this? Why are they doing this? I can boil it down to 2 words, and it's a guess. Because these beings do not say, but all the indications point to something I just call, in grandiose terms, planetary acquisition.
That's a fantastic summary of a very powerful perspective. And there are countless people out there, perhaps significantly more people out there, who have claimed to have abduction experiences, who will say it is a benevolent connection, a connection they love. They feel more comfortable with their family of ETs out there than they do with their family down here or their friends down here. What is that then?
They have bleed-through memories that are benevolent and wonderful and great. And for me, the way people process this in a lot of different ways, depending on their background and all. And I'm not in the life-ruining business. So if they want to think that, fine, that's fine with me. I usually don't see people who have that kind of a sense of this. I see people who really want to know what exactly is happening to them. I once had a woman who was heavily into that concept of benevolence and spirituality and all that, and related to aliens from another planet. And she came to me, and we'd agreed to do, whatever, session. And she was taken on board, her clothes removed, this happened to her, that happened to her, this happened to her, that happened to her. And I'm just saying, okay, what happens next? And I ask them questions about, what the next is, and then what happens next. And went on and on and on and on until she came back down. And that was it. She wrote me a letter after that saying that she was never coming back to me because she didn't want to remember the things she wanted to remember. And I wasn't leading her on. She could have remembered anything she wanted as far as I was concerned. But
But let me say something to what you were saying, which I think a lot of people would react strongly hearing what you said, that unless they came to a real bona fide therapist who could validate the experience or not. If someone says, I experienced something within, how could anyone externally say to you, no, you did not?
right, well, I'm not going to say that. I mean, I would not say that whatever happened to them didn't happen. But if they're interested in finding out whether it actually did happen or not, the chances are that it would be a different situation for them. But if they're happy and good, as I said, there's no reason for them to come to me or to other serious researchers. They have a life that they're leading, they're happy about. That's fine.
As I said, I know significantly more who talk about experiences in their sleep on another dimension. What's your experience with that, and what do you say to those people?
I have never actually dealt with a person who came to me who had a non-physical experience. That is simply not part of the phenomenon. People are physically missing from their normal environments when they are abducted. They are not mentally missing, and other people see them in bed and all the rest of that stuff or whatever. That simply, I have never had that. That does not happen.
We're dealing with millions upon millions of people who are describing this phenomenon. What is it then?
Planetary acquisition through creation of human-like hybrids. In other words, from the very beginning of our knowledge of the abduction phenomenon, the Antonio Villas-Boas case in 1957 in Brazil, Villas-Boas was taken on board a UFO. He was an illiterate Brazilian peasant. We learned later he wasn't an illiterate person. We all assumed that, but he was a law student who became an attorney. He claimed he was taken on board a UFO, and this happened to him, that happened to him, this happened to him, and that happened. Then he was placed into a room with this beautiful-looking, sort of human female, and he was required to have sexual intercourse with her. Then the very next case we discovered, the Barney and Betty Hill case in 1961, they took him, this is in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, they took him into a UFO, they did this to him and that to him, they took a sperm sample from Barney, and they injected a needle into Betty's navel, and she thought it might be a pregnancy test or whatever it is. Those two cases, which we did not recognize correctly, both had reproductive elements to them.
What do you mean we did not recognize them correctly?
Well, we knew that Barney had had a sperm sample, but we just thought it was an examination, just to see what things are like. If that, we couldn't think about these cases. There wasn't enough knowledge to even think about these. So it doesn't mean anything. You can't think correctly about them.
How should we be thinking, or what are you referring to now then?
Well, virtually every abductee has had, if it's a male, has had sperm taken from them, and every woman has had eggs taken from them, ova. This is a reproductively oriented phenomenon, and it has been since the beginning. What they do is they take the sperm and eggs, they put them into a container, let's call it a petri dish, and I don't know the backstory here, and they alter the sperm and egg, fertilized, they alter it, and now I'm going to say something that is probably not true, but makes some sort of sense. With alien DNA, I do not know whether they put alien DNA in it, and I do not know whether aliens have DNA. So, but for the purposes of argument, we'll say that. They then take the zygote and implant it in the woman. At 10 or between 10 and 12 weeks, before she really begins to show at all, they remove it, and they place the fetus into a nutrient tank, of which there might be 100 nutrient tanks lined up in a room, or 50, or sometimes even more than 100. And from that, when they take the baby out, the baby looks either very human but somewhat hybridy, but somewhat alien-y, or half and half, or more human than alien, or much more human than alien, or even human and not alien. And I have different stages that I've thought about, but it's probably more of a smooth continuum. And the question is, why are they doing that? Because from the very first cases we ever discovered, there was that reproductive aspect to it, and it has remained rigidly constant throughout the decades. Absolutely. Now, the latest information is that these beings are, in fact, that the ones who look truly human and who are human and who look absolutely average are moving into towns, into apartments, between the ages of 17 and around 23 or so, in twos and threes and sometimes in fours. And some of them are moving in independently into an apartment. They are using abductees to help them assimilate themselves into what normal human society is. Now, there's a backstory to this, too, as well, what happens when they're children and all that. And there's only one very slight, hardly noticeable difference between them and us. They can control us neurologically, make us think anything that they want us to think, make us say anything they want us to say, make us do anything they want us to do, and we cannot do that to them. That makes us a second-class species, not a citizen, but a species, and them a first-class species. There's an enormous imbalance there that is insurmountable. That's the problem. That is the problem. This is a workforce we're looking at, from a top to bottom corporate workforce. Gray aliens are probably hybrids, in my opinion. The ones who are the leaders are what we call the insect-like ones. Whether they have anything to do with insects, I don't know. But they have triangular heads and they're very thin. People say they look like praying mantises. But I think they are the ones who give orders, and everybody else takes orders. And the more you look at this, the more rational it becomes. It's a rational program. It's not like this is so bizarre we can't even get our minds around it. It is not like that. We are capable of understanding what is happening. And so even though there are millions of people who think that this is benevolent and wonderful, which is okay, there are millions of people who are not so sure about that, who are abductees also.
Thank you, Dr. Jacob.
Thank you.